Perspectives of the Savitri Upakhyan by R.Y. Deshpande. The first quality of this Rishihood recognized in Vyasa is his wonderful sense of detachment, even while remaining in the midst of his life's activities. His art, says Sri Aurobindo, is singularly disinterested, nishkam. He does not write with a view to sublimity or with a view to beauty, but because he has certain ideas to impart, certain events to describe, certain characters to portray. He has an image of these in his mind, and his business is to find expression for it, which will be scrupulously just to his conception. This is by no means so facile a task as the uninitiated might imagine. It is indeed considerably more difficult than to bathe the style in color and grace and literary elegance, for it demands vigilant self-restraint, firm intellectual truthfulness, and unsparing rejection, the three virtues most difficult to the garring, inventive, and self-indulgent spirit of man. The art of Vyasa is therefore a great, strenuous art, but it unfitted him, as a similar spirit unfitted the Greeks, to voice fully the outward beauty of nature. For to delight infinitely in nature, one must be strongly possessed with a sense of color and romantic beauty, and allow the fancy equal rights with the intellect. Ramesh Dutt saw in Vyasa only that which is not in him and gave a vernacular version of it in a short sentiment. Narad's proclamation of Satyavan's death is a great imponderable in the Savitri myth. But what is clear is that it is Satyavan who is going to abandon his body, and others are universal agents in the deep and occult plane. There are conflicting forces, and there is fate, and there is the circumstance in the walking of time. Yet the individual's free will is the primary factor in molding and shaping his destiny. Of course, very characteristically, Vyasa does not speak of these metaphysical factors in his little narrative, but it is neither the ill fate nor the degree of the high that the sage is highlighting. He is making a very simple and plain statement, and true to the process of life, about Satyavan's own decision to leave his body. There is no helplessness or succumbing, but in it a self-mastery and a choice and freedom of life are indicated by the seer poet. In fact, the connotation of dehanyasa, relinquishing of body, as a profound voluntary act is almost yogic, and a great esoteric mystic aspect of it brought out through this fine truthful face. If we are to believe in the body gestures, mudras, nyasas as a part of the deistical worship, then giving up the body itself becomes a worshipping gesture in the totality of renunciation. If Dehanyasa is such a masterful phrase given to us by Vyasa, then we at once recognize the loftiness of this poetic conception achieved through a very highly developed art, which becomes a vehicle for carrying the overt inspiration. We have here an astounding result, a miracle indeed, not small or unworthy, but large and serene and consistent in its quality, is the idiomatic development suffused with and made enduring by another breath. In this creative and expressive aesthetic achievement, not only inspiration and technique, but the presence of things deep and wonderful, although at times seeming to be tragic and remorseful of life's failure, occupy a larger space in the poetry, giving to it its real value. In that way, does the creator bring a satisfied completeness to art, putting his own stamp of greatness on it. There is no doctrinaire approach, no fetish of theory, but it is the work of a forceful artistic urge, which finds the inevitable and inspired word to tell and assert the genuine experience it brings with it and embodies in perfect form. A Johnsonian critic would be extremely happy with Vyasa, but he goes far beyond the Johnsonian canons and seizes in his line and metaphor the glowing intensity of a realized utterance. In him, There is no tendency of massing of an effect. There is only the discovery of a dense word that releases from its warm, rich womb multiple suggestions, more in the vertical than horizontal direction. We may perhaps appreciate the merit of Vyasa's art better in terms of the values and not mental conceptions he upholds most. Art is not only technique or form of beauty, says Sri Aurobindo, not only the discovery or the expression of beauty. It is a self-expression of consciousness under the conditions of aesthetic vision and a perfect execution. Or, to put it otherwise, there are not only aesthetic values, but life values, mind values, soul values that enter into art. In Valmiki and Vyasa, there is the constant presence of great idea forces and ideals supporting life and its movements, which were beyond the scope of Homer and Shakespeare. Thus, more appealing, even gripping, than the actual death of Satyavan in the Shalva wilderness is the grim prophecy of death made by Narad in Pashupati's palace at Madra. The phrase Samvatsarena Sinayur Dehanyasam Karishyati, at the end of the year, life over, he will abandon his body, as the rhythm movement of a wider world coming from across the intuitive silences which lends to the utterances itself a truth force to effectuate what it says. But let us come to the dread proper, which is presented by the poet in a few quick and sharp matter-of-fact strokes, and all done in the bareness of colors that comes out of his Nishkama Bhava, out of a sense of yogic aloofness, not empathy, but an intimate understanding of the universal spirit in a vastness of its working, gives him this superb verse in which the joy of a noble association with men and events is not missed. Satyavan is working hard in the forest, meaning to finish his job soon, that he could give a larger part of the day to his beloved. But he suddenly feels exhausted, and there is an unbearable ache, as if sharp, steely spikes were being driven into his head. Yama appears on the spot exactly at the time, as foretold by Narad, throws the noose, pulls out the soul of Satyavan, and starts moving in the direction of the south. In the same steadfastness, Savitri follows Yama and accomplishes the miracle of gaining back her husband. There is no drama, no fuss, no tears, no fitfulness, no fury. What has to be, and is accepted in life's abundant measure of fairness, carrying the hope and promise of its own rewards and boons. Assured possession of values makes the very calm of the poetry luminously powerful. Compare this, for instance, with the death scene of Cleopatra, in which there is another kind of Nishkama Bhava. A Romanian has vanquished a Roman, and the stage is set for a lifeful suicide. The pretty war of Nilas has arrived, and its biting shall prove immortal. Cleopatra must give it a royal reception. Give me my robe, put on my crown. I have immortal longings in me now no more. The justice of Egypt's grave shall moise the slip. Methinks I hear Antony call. I see him rouse himself to praise my noble act. I hear him mock the luck of Caesar, which the gods give men to excuse their after wrath. Husband, I come. Now to that name my courage prove my title. I am fire and air. My other elements I give to baser life. So, have you done? Come then, and take the last warmth of my lips. Have I the aspic in my lips? Dost fall? If thou and nature can so gently part, the stroke of death is as a lover's pinch, which hurts and is desired. Come thou, mortal wretch, With thy sharp teeth, the snot intrinsicate of life at once untie, poor venomous fool, be angry and dispatch. There is nothing austere here. Instead, some imperial glow of life's passion illumines more than destroys the nobility that stands above death and death. There is tension and drama, but it is so intense and so dramatic that it, by a strange mechanism, becomes totally impersonal. At once, the breath of a tall, live god gathers into his oceanic lungs the power of a vibrant spirit, imperious in will and impatient in reaching the violent end, and yet acts in a sense of supreme abandonment. The poet, in an exceptional moment of intuitive vitality, has objectified the life of feelings without getting touched by those feelings. The subjective does not muddle up the objective. The song of saddest thought has in it the majesty of unconcern, which makes it a song of sweetest cherishment. It is not the personality of the poet that we see in the poetry. What stands out is rather the great personality of a universal force that takes shape and emerges from his life world in its unsurpassable creative urge. The purple anger is commanding, grand. Cleopatra had immortal longings. And she fulfilled them through one life-stunning dispatch of the infallible fool. But it was not Cleopatra who did it. It was some archetypal aspect of over life that embodied itself and accomplished the death and life transcending wonder. If we are to see it in the reverse, then it looks as though the remarkable queen had no emotion, but possessed only the intent of doing and achieving something she had set out to do and achieve in the greatness of her queenhood, making the death too queenly great. She has immortalized a quintessential life mood in the concreteness of the terrestrial grain. To what we attune ourselves in this suicide poetry is therefore the noble unconcern, Nishkam Bhava, of the poet. He himself becomes impersonal, yet allowing the stream of some impetuous energy to flow through him. We do not get the joy, rus, of same detachment in, say, Duncan's murder in Macbeth's castle. Lady Macbeth wants to be unsexed and filled with direst cruelty that, with the help of murdering ministers, she would let a hell loose in her design of ghastly ambition. And the poet is true to the occasion, that the thick blood dripping from the murderous hands could make a whole green sea red. Yet the dead body of Duncan, ugly and mutilated by infamous agents, would not really frighten us. Instead, it is made more living by the power of poetry. Still, this power is not splendid enough to lift it up from the royal couch that it may wear a beauty's face. Even the simplicity with its richly suggestive compliment in, after life's fitful fever, he sleeps well. Make us doubt if indeed he slept well enough when the fever had run down. Poetic identification mark of a total detachment is still not very distinct on this corpse's forehead. In that respect, the Cleopatra passage stands far above the Macbethian incarnation. It is supreme achievement of the poet becoming completely impersonal, a most difficult job in the riot and color of life's million moods. The artist has portrayed a very violent event, but the unquietude does not seem to touch him. It is a supreme achievement of the poem becoming completely impersonal, a most difficult job in the riot and color of life's million moods. The artist has portrayed a very violent event, but the unquietude does not seem to touch him. The object is not swallowed up by the subject, and vice versa. He has taken hold of a skylark to pour all his unsung melodies and yet remain the grand witness, Purush, of the ancient Indian psychology, a dispassionate judge who does not tamper with the evidence in a complex case. Indeed, in a certain manner of speaking, we may say that no great art is possible without the sense of true detachment, not only classical, but also dramatic and even romantic, not only poetry, but every art perhaps. That the statue of the Buddha carved in a rocky mountain loses itself and becomes some infinity of calm, as does the marble Radha Krishna in the Vrindavan of bliss. Monet's painting of his dead wife still in the bed also greatly belongs to the superior class. But the Nishkama Bhava of Vyasa is altogether of a different quality than that of Shakespeare. He is a poet of men and empires and is seated in the midst of warring heroes and hears the loud deafening battle cries, yet even in this rough and tumble his rishihood remains rooted in the strength of the spirit's dynamic silence. The bright lustre of a steady fire glows in him everywhere, even while participating energetically in the dramatic action of the world. But he has the detachment of a true spiritual ascetic, being steadfast and unshaken by even the heaviest of storms, as the Gita would say. That is why we see in Vyasa a constant presence of great idea forces and ideals supporting life and its movements. With that power, he can become a molder of a society and of a nation. Things which are unquestionably beyond the capacity of Shakespeare. To put it in other words, Vyasa's sense of detachment is a rishi's, whereas Shakespeare's aesthetic vital. In the one, Nishkam Bhava has brought out soul values, and in the other, by a kind of channelization, life's aspects.